This is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show, heard daily on Bible School Radio 91.3 KDKR, Decatur, Dallas, Fort Worth, and on 91.3 KYJC Commerce.
Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, so how can you manage your money optimistically? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon and welcome to the Prudent Money Radio Show. I'm your host, Bob Brooks. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. There you'll see two different resources there to help you out with whatever questions and financial issues that you might be dealing with. Or you may want to even make a comment. Would love that as well. First, there's just the email address. It's always been there. We've always had that up as a resource, and we do answer every one of those emails that come in. If you've ever sent an email in the past and it did not get answered, then resend it, because we do when things get lost or things go into spam and we may not see something, but we definitely want to answer your question. Then there's another space for situations that are a little bit more involved and need more time than just an email address. So I have put blocks of 20 to 30 minutes on my calendar where you can sign up to have a conversation with me on the phone. There's no cost, there's no expenses or anything like that. It's just another way that we have opened up a resource to help you in situations where email really doesn't work. So that's two ways to do it, all at prudentmoney.com. Let's talk a little bit about what is facing the stock market, facing the economy, and facing you as an investor, as someone who wants to retire at some point. I've been thinking a lot about this here lately, because some of which because I'm writing a book, but the other because this is a real, I think, a real barrier in the road for most people. And it's when we talk about risk and talk about maybe the more negative of forecasts of things that could happen. And I know for a lot of people might wonder, why do I always bring this up? Why do I always bring up the other side of the story? Because you're not getting it in the media. See, from a stewardship standpoint, it's so very important to see both sides. And I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just reporting what I'm seeing. And only time will say, well, yeah, that was a real problem, what Bob was reporting, or there's nothing to it. But at the same time, you still need to see both sides of the story to make good stewardship-based decisions. And I got to tell you, I don't like the environment that I'm seeing develop before our very eyes. It's almost, and I use this probably more than I should, but it's still a great analogy. It's like the situation where you are living on the coast of, say, Florida, and the hurricane, the severe hurricane, maybe it's a category 3, 4, or 5, is slowly moving its way through the ocean and heading your way. And at some point, I mean, that category 4 hurricane could break down and develop into a category 1, so it won't be that big of a deal. Or it could be full of intensity and really set some cities, towns, regions back years that will have to do with rebuilding. So that's where I feel like we are today. I think that we're looking at a financial hurricane coming our way, and the meteorologists are just talking about what sunny days that it is, how sunny it is, how great the weather is. And, you know, the weather is pretty phenomenal even before a hurricane hits. But then it starts to deteriorate little by little until it gets really bad, and then the hurricane hits. And usually it's not a long-term affair, but it does the damage, and a lot of damage. And the what I grapple with is coming across very gloom and doom about what's going on in our country, and gloom and doom about the stock market. What I want to be able to leave with you, those of you who consistently listen, is a positive, reinforced, God-inspired message that even though things are the way that they are, you don't have to fear the outcome. And that's it. And maybe I don't phrase it that way enough. Maybe I don't talk about it that way a month. Maybe I don't bring that up every time I talk about something negative that I'm seeing. But there is a long list. I mean, I've been doing this for 31 years, and this is probably the most concerning that I've seen things. Now, there's a lot of different dynamics today than there were 30 years ago. Number one, there's a lot more reporting of the negativity by not by a whole lot of financial media resources, but there's still, if you wanted to find it, you could easily find it. Whereas in the past, I mean, things kind of snuck up on you. But then again, most people aren't paying attention to this. Most people don't understand it, and so therefore they don't get any interest in reading it. So what I thought I would do, and here is kind of my schedule on this. I want to read through various information that I've collected just over the weekend, over the last couple of weeks actually. And some I've talked about before, but I want to put it all together and let you see what I'm seeing. And then I want to tell you the answer to what do I do next? Do I crawl into a hole? Do I react with fear? No, you don't do that. You don't crawl into a hole. We're going to take a whole program and dedicate it to that question and that answer. And hopefully, I've got 2 interviews booked Tuesday and Wednesday this week. It's going to either be Thursday or I'm going to be able to reschedule tomorrow, and it will be on Tuesday that I really address what you do biblically. What do you do? I'll put a little emphasis on that. So let's start out with the first article, and it's published by NBC Network, and it says Americans are doom spending. Here's why that's a problem. Doom spending may be one way to cope with stress as economic fears mount. However, it comes at the expense of your financial well-being. You know, it's very easy, especially this time of year, to fool yourself and decide, well, if I just got that, then I'd be happy. If I just got that, then maybe this financial recession won't be so bad. And that's not where the answer lies, and you know that. But it's easy to block everything else out and just and take action on assumptions that are not useful for us. And so in this scenario, this is one way in which debt, consumer credit card debt, has gone over the $1 trillion mark. As I've said, because I believe the majority of that increase is people spending to live off of credit cards, which is consistent with the statistics that have come out. But it's dangerous to be adding a ton of debt right now. Well, it's always dangerous to do that anyway, but it's especially dangerous. So doom spending says nearly all Americans, 96%, are concerned about the current state of the economy, according to recent report by Intuit Credit Karma. Still, more than a quarter are doom spending or spending money despite economic and geopolitical concerns, the report found. The bottom line basis of what you want to do is not increase debt, but decrease debt and increase your emergency savings. While it's easier to do so. Even as inflation and high interest rates have squeezed budgets, a record 200 million shoppers turned out between Black Friday and Cyber Monday. This particular article doesn't report this, but Business Insider reported that, yes, there were record numbers of people Black Friday through Cyber Monday that were shopping, but considerably less were spending money, was the message there. So we have a consumer base that is operating out of fear. And it says, even as credit card debt topples 1 trillion, Gen Z and millennials are particularly susceptible to this mindset. Rather than cut expenses, 73% of Gen Zers say they would rather live in the moment. A recent prosperity index study by Intuit found. So I would suggest that, yeah, you can live in the moment, spend the money, but in the future you're leveraging your present future moments. Not a good way to go through it, but it really, as I'm kind of done with that article, but the point that I want to make is that we're searching for happiness in the wrong place. We're not going to find it in the goods and services. We're not going to find it in a new car, a new electronics, or a new whatever you're wanting to go into debt to buy. Not going to find it in drugs. Not going to find it in alcohol. It's the instant gratification God that we're going after. The God with the little g, not the real thing. So we're going to talk a lot more about this. We're up against a break. Stick around. I'll be right back.
The Word for Today is excited to announce the new official online home for the ministry of Pastor Chuck Smith and Kay Smith, pastorchuck.org. At pastorchuck.org, you'll have instant access to thousands of hours of verse-by-verse teaching by Pastor Chuck Smith from Genesis through Revelation, and full access to special messages on subjects such as prophecy and much, much more. Also at pastorchuck.org, a full library of great teachings by Kay Smith, and a section where you can read some of Pastor Chuck's books online, all free of charge. So visit the new official online home of the Word for Today and the ministry of Pastor Chuck and Kay Smith, pastorchuck.org.
The Apostle John was concerned that those who profess to follow Jesus would model their faith by being devoted to truth, by loving others generously, and by living lives of integrity. This week on Truth for Life, Alistair Begg takes a closer look at some who succeeded and one who failed.
Weekdays at 5:30 a.m. here on 91.3 KDKR.
Dynamic, practical, life-changing.
There's no point in going to church and not letting the Christ who gave birth to the church on the day of Pentecost change your life.
Join us each day as Pastor Paul Shepherd applies the timeless truth of Scripture to everyday life. It's Destined for Victory on this great station.
Weekday afternoons at 3:30 here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. This is a part one, part two type situation where I'm talking about what I'm seeing, and which is not real positive going forward for the economy, for the markets. And how do you deal with that? How do you take that in? What decisions do you make? And best of all, how can you look at that with joy in your heart, with optimism? You see, that's the thing, is that if you knew me, you would know that I'm very, very optimistic. It's just that my position on this, and the whole reason for doing this program, is to say there's two sides of the story. and you can't come up with the appropriate belief systems, which is your beliefs that are through prayer, in how investments work, how you get the results you get, what you do during times of tough economic times. And as we look into next year, there's a lot, and we'll talk about this, there are a lot of different signs of recessions. So today we're going to talk about what I'm seeing in either tomorrow or Thursday, depends on how my schedule works out. We're going to talk about the what do you do? What are the actions you take? We've already heard about, and I've reported on it, 4 or 5 buildings, and this is just one story, in the DFW area said, can't deal with it anymore. The expenses are too high. Here's the keys back to the investment group or the bank. Good knowing you. It's your problem now, and those buildings are under foreclosure. And it comes back to the trend of most people working from home, which I still just cannot believe that is stuck, but it has, and it's something that I don't believe will change. I don't believe we'll ever go back to what was normal. We're in the new normal. And what this does, though, to real estate developers, investors in buildings, and banks, and it's a big gap when they're used to having occupancy of 90 plus percent, or even 100%. They're looking at 25-30%. And so if I'm a business that has 15, 20, 25, 30 or plus people working for me, and half of them are working at home, and I've got 5,000 square feet, I'm going to move, maybe take everything remote. And I know people who are running companies that are all remote. That's more on the that's not as prevalent today, as people still need kind of a home base. But still, there is a lot of deals, commercial building deals coming due this year, and I don't think people are going to have money to pay for it. And this article talks about the phenomenon of landlords just tossing the keys to the building to the banker and said, hey, it's your problem now. In fact, the building that I office in is under foreclosure. Go figure. But if you drive in the parking lot, you'll see why it's under foreclosure, because there's only one level that has cars on it, and it's not even full. And it's something that's we'll see how it works out, but this could be a major problem in the bond markets and in the real estate markets, commercial real estate for sure. And then out of a letter that I wrote, Ominous Signs for 2024, I pointed out 2 or 3 things. The first one is that, and we've talked about this, is the market is under the mindset that under the, do we call it a lie, or do we call it a misinformation? Whatever it is, it's not the correct information, at least I don't believe it is. That inflation's under control. You go grocery shopping, you spend money elsewhere. That's not true. I don't know. We'll leave that up to you to call that what you want to call it. It's just not true, and that's something that's factual, because it can be proved it's not true. Inflation is still a real problem, and what they're trying for you to make you believe is that inflation is under control, and that the Federal Reserve Board, who's in control of interest rates, or the main benchmark interest rate, is going to cut interest rates next year. And that is something that I've said many times I don't believe is going to happen, because I don't believe they can do it. Because if they cut interest rates, it's going to have to be a pretty desperate situation for them to cut interest rates. guess what will end up inflating back all over again? All of the bubbles that were here prior to the bear market of last year. Stock market bubble, the bond market bubble, the real estate bubble. I mean, it was, we used to call it the bubble of bubbles, if you recall. And if it sends the message, hey, we're going to start cutting rates, it's going to inflate those bubbles back up. Those bubbles haven't even had a chance to go through what I call a detox period to get healthy again. And it gets to a point to where people are not so enthusiastic about buying stock. That is when you start to see valuations come down on stocks and stocks to get healthy again. But so that's what's happening there. An observation that I made, I just want to read this to you. An extremely accurate predictor of recessions is showing signs of concern. In general, there are short-term interest rates such as CDs and money markets, and there are long-term interest rates in the bond market. A normal environment for interest rates is when long-term bond. Just wait till I get to the end. When short-term rates are higher than long-term, listen to this. It's called an inverted yield curve. Now, this is all you need to know. Don't need to understand all the technical aspects of this. It's that an inverted yield curve, which is present in our country, has preceded every recession since 1955. That would be like a hurricane of some sort is coming towards Florida, and we're just expecting it to evaporate completely, no nothing, which is impossible. So it's predicting something that's not good. Another economic indicator is also predicting something that's not good. It's saying the leading economic index is very good at anticipating turning points in the economy. In other words, it's a great predictor of recession. It anticipates turning points either into recession or out of recession. Get this, here we go. This is what I want you to hear. The 64-year record is why it is so predictive. During that time period, the leading economic index has predicted a recession 100% of the time. Okay, one more paragraph and I'll be done with this. When the indicator has dropped 4% or greater 100% of the time, a recession has been predicted. So if it's dropped 4% or greater 100% of the time, there's been a recession. It's predicted it. We are sitting on an LEI, leading economic index, that is down not 4%, not 5%, but 8% below where it was a year ago. And this past month was the 19th month in a row that the index has declined. There's only two other periods of time that were longer, 1973, which was 22 months, and 2007, which was 24 months. And, of course, 2007 was right before the financial crisis. In 1973 was right before a really tough time in the markets and the economy back in the 70s. So that was from a letter that I wrote to my clients. Now, so you're looking at indicators that are saying this happens 100% of the time. Then the last thing I'm going to have time to talk about is the money supply. That's the supply of money in this country. The Federal Reserve Board can increase that money supply by pushing money into the economy, or it can decrease the money supply and decrease the money supply by taking money out of the economy. Right now, for the first time in 90 years, the U.S. money supply is meaningful contracting, meaning it's going down. And there's several ways to measure money, but this one's probably encompasses all types of money and is most accurate, and it has fallen -4%. And it's the first time since the Great Depression that that's happened. Now, I don't use those words lightly, and keep in mind that the Great Depression was totally of a different situation than what we're looking at this time. In fact, keep that in mind for just about everything as compared to the past. Is the technology that we have today, the culture that we have today is very, very different than the way it was in the 20s, for instance. But when money supply has declined by at least 2%, which is in 1878, 1893, 1921, 1931, and over the past year and change, that's right. The current drop in the money supply is the first notable decline since the Great Depression. Now, what all that means together, I don't know, but I think that it paints a picture that we've got a problem. And it means that risk, in my opinion, is high in the market. So what do you do with that? How do you approach that? How do you take action? What do you do? And we're going to talk about that at length this week, Tuesday or Thursday of this week. And I'm going to try to get something rearranged in my calendar so I can go right back into this material tomorrow. I think it's important, and I think it's there's a great message here that is one of joy and optimism versus what's predicted as could happen. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.